In this segment, we're going to talk more about the specifics of the midbrain. The midbrain is the most cranial of the three parts of the brainstem, and it's continuous with the diencephalon. Now, the diencephalon is all things thalamus. We'll talk more about that when we talk about the cortex and the gray matter deep within the cortex. But for now, what I want you to know is it's the thalamus, and it's right here. It's a bilateral structure, and we talked a little bit about the thalamus when we talked about sensory systems, because that's a place where all of your senses are going to relay before they go up to the cortex. So the midbrain is continuous with the diencephalon, and you can see that here in the dorsal and then here in the ventral aspects. The other things that I want to draw your attention to are, again, the crus cerebri, which, remember, are those motor fibers as they come from the posterior aspect of the posterior internal capsule, and then they go through the pons, and then they become the pyramids in the medulla. And two new structures that I haven't really talked to you much about yet, and that is the tectum. And the tectum just means four, and what you have are two superior and two inferior colliculi. And the colliculi, there's two on each side, and so a total of four, hence tectum. The superior and inferior colliculi are involved with auditory and visual relays and some of the coordinating of your audio and visual reflexes, which is more complicated than even I have got all of the logistics down on yet, but I'm working on it. So I'm not going to really talk about those in this series of lectures, but I do want you to know that those landmarks are there and that they're prominent and they're easy to see. So in the next section, next slide, you can actually see the tectum. Here are those two superior and two inferior colliculi. Colliculus just means little bump. So if you section through the midbrain, you'll see two different levels or two different areas that are of note, and these include the level of the superior colliculus and the inferior colliculus. Another important landmark that you'll see is, remember we talked about the fourth ventricle, which is on top of the pons and underneath the cerebellum, and we talked about how the lateral ventricles drain into the third ventricle drains into the fourth, and the passageway between the third and the fourth is the cerebral aqueduct, and that is right here, right in the heart of the midbrain. Again, we can see our crus cerebri right here, our superior and inferior colliculus, and our cerebral aqueduct. There are two cranial nerves that are associated with the midbrain, and those are cranial nerves 3, which is here on the midline, and 4. Now, the reason that 4 is all the way out here is because cranial nerve 4 is very strange. It is the only cranial nerve that starts dorsally and then wraps around the other direction. All of the other cranial nerves exit from the ventral aspect of the brainstem. Only the trochlear, and I don't know why, exits from the dorsal aspect and wraps around. So it's a little bit odd, but that's the way it is. If you've been counting, you know that we're only up to 10 cranial nerves, and you probably already know that there are 12. Cranial nerves 1 and 2 don't really attach to the brainstem. So cranial nerve 1, olfactory, is way up in front, and it doesn't make it to the brainstem at all. But you can see cranial nerve 2, and it is right here. So there is your optic nerve. It usually can be seen coming up from underneath the brain from the eyeball, which is out in here. We'll talk more about the optic and the olfactory nerves when we talk about our cranial nerves of special sense. In the next segment, we'll talk a little bit about areas of the brainstem that don't fall into any of these specific cranial nerve categories. So we'll talk a little bit in the next segment about the reticular formation.